Today, we're continuing our series called Purple Christmas. Took a little break last week, but we're back today. And if this is your first week with us, you might be wondering, what's the deal with purple, right? Purple Christmas, what does that have to do with anything? Well, last week I told you about a book called Purple Cow. It was written by a guy named Seth Godin. And basically what he said is like, just imagine you're driving down some, country road in Pennsylvania and you're looking at cows, right? We don't have many cows around here, unfortunately. But imagine you are, and you're going to see some brown ones, you're going to see some black ones, some white ones, some spotted ones. But what would happen if you were driving and you saw a purple one? Imagine you're in the car with someone, you see a purple cow. What would you do? What would you do? You'd be like, whoa, a purple cow, right? It stands out. It is quite literally, he said, it is quite literally remarkable. It forces you to make, you can't just like see it and keep going. It forces you to make a remark because purple like demands center stage, right? Purple stands out. It cannot be ignored. Now it's a marketing book and he talks about how, like your product or whatever has to like stand out and so whatever. But for the sake of this series, what we're talking about is really, like if you think about the Christmas story, the original Jesus, Mary, and Joseph Christmas story, it really is a purple story. There are so many crazy things that are happening in that story, especially if you line it up next to some Christmas stories, right? There are so many crazy things that are happening in that story. You can't help but make a remark about it. They stand out. Now, with us, some of us are so familiar with the whole nativity idea with Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, and the shepherds and the wise men. We're so used to it that it's not center stage. It kind of like fades into the background. And the problem with that is when it fades into the background, it takes with it all the remarkable things that story has to offer us. And so we're taking a look, this week and last week, 2 weeks ago, we're looking at just how purple and remarkable, and I think you'll see that it has a lot to say to us right now. Last week, we looked at the story as a whole. We talked about Mary, how crazy her life was, and like all these crazy, not really ups and downs, just kind of like downs, Her reputation was ruined. There was all this hardship. And what we said is like most Christmas stories, right? Remember this? Most Christmas stories, most Christmas movies, a great Christmas movie, the classic Christmas movies, resolve every tension and they tie every loose end, Like the Grinch hates Christmas, but no, he saves Christmas at the end. Kevin is reunited with his family, right? He even gives the turtle doves to the lady in the park. Ralphie gets his Red Ryder BB gun, fill in the blank with your favorite Christmas movie. All the, loose ends are tied and you just get the warm fuzzies all over. And so we watch them again and again and again and again. The original Christmas story, it is filled with loose ends and unresolved tensions. It is filled with loose ends. And that's really what makes it a purple story. And I would argue it's why there really aren't any great movies about Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. There are some out there, but you can't really, unless you change the story, you can't really create this like, wow, everything came together in the end, because it doesn't. It doesn't. The vibe is more like we just barely made it, and now here we have a baby, and they put the baby in a manger, which is not the resolution to the story. It's another weird detail, because that was something animals ate out of. It's this idea like we are so exhausted from the 90-mile trip we just took, and had to do this whole situation on our own. Where do we put this? And they put it in a manger. So just craziness. And for us, hopefully, one, that's comforting. Loose ends and unresolved tensions. To know that like the origin story of Jesus here is just a mess. It's a mess. And I don't know about you, but like I got a lot of loose ends and unresolved tensions. Maybe you're like waiting for something. Maybe you're hoping your Grinch his heart will grow 2 sizes. Maybe you're waiting for something, or there's an issue, and you're waiting and waiting for the warm fuzzies and the resolutions, but it isn't coming. For me, it's comforting knowing, all right, we're not the first. But also, it comes with this anchor of hope. Remember, if you were here, we had the rope. Because in their story, it's not the whole story. It's just the beginning. And if you step back, we know that there's something infinitely better going on behind the scenes. But at the time, they have no idea. So that gives us hope. So today we're talking about another aspect of the Christmas story. And here's where we'll start. Has anyone ever seen The Voice? Anybody? Yes? Okay. So my wife and I, we used to watch that show a lot. Then we stopped. Then we started watching it again because somebody from our community, Bella DiNapoli, was on The Voice. And so I know we talked about it here. I know a lot of you watched and voted for it. It was very, very exciting. She did a great job. Let's give a round of applause for Bella. If you stick around, she might be here at our Christmas Eve service. But, so here's how The Voice works, right? There are these big, grand chairs, like this big, grand chair. This is actually a chair used for pedicures, but it's what you use when you have to play the drums from a step. So here's how it works, right? There's all these judges, and they're like this. They've got their backs turned to a stage. And on stage is a contestant with hopes and dreams of one day making it and winning the approval of the judges. And so all the chairs are turned, the backs are facing the people up here, and they go up there and they give everything that they've got, you know? And usually it starts off like, okay, where's this gonna go? Then they hit the big, I don't know what it is, but it's like the big part of the song, right? And then there's the moment when the judge or the coach decides, I want them on my team. Like, they're good enough for me. And it's like, boom, they hit this big red buzzer, and then the chair turns around. It's like, you're with me, right? And then they try to convince them to be on their team. And it's exciting. And for people that make it, it's really great. And you like feel the relief with them when the buzzer is hit, and it's fantastic. But inevitably, there are some people that go up there, and they just give it everything they have. Right? Like, you could tell they're excited, they're singing, and then they get to like the big part of the song, and there's no turn of the chair. And the song ends, and that's it. Next. They're up here like performing, presenting themselves, like everything that they have, hoping to win over. They're hoping that they're gonna end up on the team of the people who are here. Right? And they get nothing. And it's sad. It's heartbreaking. So here's where I'm going with this. Have you ever felt this way with God? Right? Like, here I am. Maybe you're not singing, but maybe you're living. It's like, this is what I've got. This is what I bring to the table. I'm trying to perform, and all I want is for you to say like, hey, we're good, right? I want your chair to turn and invite me to be on your team, right? And maybe you've tried that before, and maybe it's some kind of equation for you, like, okay, maybe if I stop doing this and I start doing that, and if I try to maybe get to church a little bit more, and maybe then like God will be like, all right, boom, here I am for you, come be on my team, right? But maybe you've tried that and you don't feel like the chair is turning. You don't feel like you've performed well enough to win his approval. And eventually it gets frustrating. And you know this. If you work hard enough to try and win someone's approval and you can't get it, eventually you just give up. You're like, forget it, right? Or maybe you haven't tried before. But maybe this is how you understand God and the whole situation, religious church situation. And you're like, yeah, you know what? I'm not doing that. I'm not playing that game. I'm not gonna just try and get God to like me and turn the chair. And maybe you've seen some people where it seems like the chair is turned for them, Seems like God listens to them. Like, what's the difference here? If you've ever felt like this is how it's set up between us and God, people and God. Or maybe if you kept Christianity at an arm's length because this is how you've understood. And you're like, I'm just not into that. I'm not doing that. I'm not going to try and put on a show for God with hopes that he's going to turn around for me. There's an aspect of the Christmas story. It's a purple aspect, and it has a lot to say about this exact issue. So in our little Christmas presentation, we've got all these characters here, right? So let's put them up. Right, see this? There's no faces, just shadows. But we've got these, there's like Jesus, Mary, and Joseph in the middle. We talked about this 2 weeks ago. It might not have been a stable, probably more like a cave, right? Then the shepherds, the sheep. The people we're talking about are these people over here on the end. They're the people we know as the three kings who were there the night that Jesus was born, right? That's nice. They have a camel. They bring like gold, frankincense, and myrrh, right? Does anyone have myrrh anymore? Yeah. There's one overachiever in that group, gold. Okay, so there's a few things we need to clear up with this story, right? Three kings that were there, we know them as the three kings that were there the night that Jesus was born. The first thing we need to know about, before you see how crazy remarkable these people are, is that they weren't there. They weren't there the night that Jesus was born. This probably happened days, weeks, or maybe months. Some people would even say like over a year after Jesus was born, they showed up on the scene. So they weren't in the stable. Now they're in our little nativity set, and it's nice because it makes it a little more full, and it gives us a reason to have a camel, and it's fun, right? And so that's great. We can keep them there. But technically, they weren't there, okay? Second thing, there weren't three. There weren't three. There were three gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh, but all we know is that there was more than one who showed up. Could be two, could have been 12. Could have been a whole pack of them. We don't really know, okay? So there weren't three, they weren't there, and lastly, they weren't kings. Over three, weren't kings. Now, this for me, when I heard this, I was like, okay, that answered a lot of questions for me. I always wondered, like, what's the deal here, you know? Are they part of some club where, like, kings hang out, you know? Where they each have a country, they're just spending time together. How does this work? Well, no, they're not actually kings. And it's in this that the story starts to get like crazy, okay? Here's what it says. It says, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem, in Judea, during the time of King Herod, who do we have? We have Magi from out east. They came from the Hamptons. Just kidding. They came to Jerusalem. And they asked, where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? They're talking about Jesus. This was a title used for Jesus. They also used the word Messiah. But the whole idea, and this might be helpful in understanding the story, the ancient Jewish people, they were waiting for a hero to come. And they were told one day he would come. And so their whole society was waiting for this person to come. And so we have these Magi who show up, and they're like, where is he? Where is he? We think that he's here. If you were part of the original audience who's reading this whole account was written by a guy named Matthew. What he's doing, the reason he's writing, he's trying to convince the ancient religious people that Jesus is the guy that they were waiting for, okay? He includes these Magi in the story. Magi we get the word like magic from Magi. They were into sorcery. They were into witchcraft, astrology, like they would read the skies. The things that they did to the ancient religious community were totally off limits. If you were part of this community and you were participating in what they were doing, you literally could lose your life for it. Like the punishment was really, really severe. And they show up and they're like, hey, where's the guy? Where's the guy you've been waiting for? We think that he's here now. If you were reading this back then, it would feel like no, like they're not supposed to be in the story. Somebody must have broken into my library and vandalized it. It would have seemed like a joke because these people don't fit in the little church box that the religious community had. What they were doing was not okay in their eyes. And so the fact that they're in this story at all is just mind-boggling to these people. Matthew includes this story, these people in the story, to help us to see that there is something much bigger going on here than just in that small religious community. He's talking about the universal pursuit of God, the timeless desire to know that there is someone, something out there that cares. Some people have called it like a God-shaped hole within us. It's been around forever in every civilization, and it takes different forms. This is what Matthew's talking about. He's like, you've got your little box, but there's something so much bigger going on that you might not completely understand. The ancient Buddhist monks refer to this as a red-hot coal that's stuck in your throat. It's too hot to swallow, but you can't spit it out. It's a drive. It's a need to want to know, is there someone out there? There's a writer, his name's C.S. Lewis. He's a genius, right? He's one of those thinkers. And he said you know how we're hungry for food. We want to eat food. That hunger, the fact that you have hunger, really, it points to the existence of food, right? There is a desire that is made to be fulfilled by food. In the same way, the thirst is evidence for the existence of water. If you had never seen water, but you were thirsty, you would feel like there's something out there that's got to fix this feeling. It's in the same way, throughout all of human history, there's been this desire to know, to get in touch with something beyond us. And he's like, that points to this desire for God. Tom Brady. Anybody know Tom Brady? Really? That's it? Well, if you've never heard of him, you're not missing out. No, I'm just kidding. He's okay. He's great. He's great. He's a football player. He's known now as the greatest of all time. And a few years ago, it was 2 or 3 Super Bowls ago, he was asked in an interview. They were like, so Tom, what's next? You've got a beautiful wife. You've got a beautiful family. He's got his own vitamins, his own diet. He's won a bunch of Super Bowls. This was a few years ago. He already won a bunch. What's next? What are you going to do next? And he said, I just feel like there's got to be more. There's got to be something else. And it's no, really? Tom Brady said that? It's he hit the cheat code for life, how to get everything you want. Jim Carrey said, I wish everybody could get rich and famous and achieve everything they ever wanted so that they would realize that wouldn't satisfy you. This is what they're talking about. For Tom Brady, the answer was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Just kidding. But there is this deep yearning. And maybe that's maybe you can connect with that. Maybe that's why you're here right now. Maybe this is the reason why you were pointed in this direction. Maybe there's this feeling, I just feel like there's got to be something else out there. This is what Matthew is talking about. It's the universal, timeless pursuit that people have to get in touch with God. We want to know that there is someone in the chair. We want to know that there's someone there. So the story gets a little purple. Magi are in it, right? And now here's where it goes crazy purple, spills purple all over it. Where is the one who has been born the King of the Jews? They say, we saw his star when it rose, and we have come to worship him. Now you hear the star, and you're like, oh, star. That's the star of wonder, star of night, the song. For us, it's just part of the little nativity. It goes on the front, or it goes on the top of the tree. Star. There's stars hanging downstairs in our classrooms. Part of the Christmas story for us. For them, wasn't. For them, this was crazy. In fact, the next verse says that they were all disturbed by what they heard. What they're saying, remember I told you the Magi, they were sorcerers and into witchcraft and astrology? What they were saying is that we have read the stars, which was forbidden in the religious community at that time. We have read the stars, and we believe God has told us this is what's happening. That's why it's so disturbing. Like, they weren't allowed to do that. And so if you step back a little bit, like, really what Matthew is showing us is like, yes, there is this universal pursuit of God on the side of people. But at the same time, there is this unending, constant, like somewhat uncomfortable pursuit of God to people. Like, God is pursuing people, not just people pursuing God. And he does it in ways, it's like we've got this little God box, you know, like this is what I believe God will do and can do, like right here. And here's our church box. And these are the people we think. And it's like God just like busts through the walls of their boxes, like the Kool-Aid man storming into a room, right? Like he totally, to an uncomfortable extent. If a person in this religious community at that time were to be caught reading the stars, they were in big trouble. And so the fact that they're claiming this is how they know was crazy, crazy disturbing to them. This isn't a story just about people pursuing God. It's a story about a God who is pursuing relentlessly people. In other words, if we go back to our little illustration here, it's as if the chair is turned. And he is moving toward us, not after a performance, not like after you've done enough good things, not after you've proven, okay, you're good enough to be on my team. No, it's this desire, like just come as you are with your issues, with your mess ups. Like he wants us to be with him and to walk through life with him, with all of our issues. The chair has already been turned. The story gets interesting. It says that this disturbed people. The king, Herod, he was disturbed. Now, he was disturbed for one reason. He was crazy. He was a king, and he was obsessed with power. And so the idea of anyone else being king, like when they said king of the Jews, that was his title. And so to say that we heard that there's a king of the Jews, it bothered him. In fact, he killed his own family members just because he didn't like the idea of someone being king after him, okay? Crazy. He was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. They're disturbed because of these Magi and what they're claiming to do. So here's what happens. It says, when he called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, these are the religious authorities, the people who like are masters in the scriptures. They call the shots, they make the rules. He asked them where the Messiah was to be born. In your Old Testament, like promises, remember he was promised that he was going to come. Where does it say he's going to be? And they say in Bethlehem, in Judea, they replied. And then they're like, we got that memorized. And so they say, for this is what the prophet has written. But you, and they're quoting from their Bibles. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people, Israel. So here it is. Herod's like, oh, we think that there's some people that they want to know where this Messiah is. They think he's here. Where is he? And they're like this. They're like, yeah, we got that verse memorized. Bethlehem. He's like, okay. Now Herod comes up with a little plan because he doesn't like the idea of there being somebody else. But everybody else, they're like, see ya. Goodbye. And they go. Matthew is writing to these people, to this religious community. They're still alive, a lot of them. And so it's as if he's saying, do you remember? Do you remember when the Magi showed up? Remember when all Jerusalem was disturbed? When they said they thought, and who went out to go see him? Nobody. Just them. They were curious. They were looking. And you didn't go. It was as if God was trying to get your attention too. But you weren't listening. Like this, and you can disagree with me, but these Magi, they could have just gone straight to Jesus. God could have just sent them straight to where Jesus was, but he didn't. It's like he had them stop first to go tell this whole community who was apparently waiting for this answer, waiting to know, As if, it says in Bethlehem, all you got to do, hey, Siri, take me to Bethlehem, and boom, because these people think he's here now. So maybe you don't all have to go, but, send a teenager to go, follow the people and be like, oh, yeah, okay, they were telling the truth. He's actually here. Or no, but nobody cared. No one's listening, right? It's like, where is he supposed to be? Bethlehem. And then they just go back to doing what they can't be disturbed. And so if we go back to our little, our little visual over here, I think what Matthew would say, yes, we want to know there's someone in the chair. Yes, the chair is turned to us. But sometimes God is trying to get our attention. And it's me in the chair. And I don't have time for whatever he has to say. And the tragedy in this story, don't get me wrong, the tragedy is that these people, this is what they wanted. This was everything that they wanted. They would talk and tell stories and have dreams about one day this person coming. And this is God saying, this is what you wanted. It's here. I'm trying to show you. And you're off doing your own thing. You weren't listening. And so what we see here in this story is God trying to get the attention of people. And he's doing it in ways that they understand. Like the Magi, they read the stars. And that's not normally how God operates. But it's as if he's like, you know what? They're looking, they want answers. And so here, twinkle, twinkle. And he shows them. And then there are these people that are experts in these writings. And he's like, here it is. And he shows them. But only one group was listening. Here's my question for you. I believe that God is speaking to us all the time. Are you listening? Are you listening? Now, I used to hear people say this, right? Really, respected teachers or people who had a lot of faith. And I'd be like, yeah, I don't know about that. I'd go in my room and be like, all right, I need to know what college to go to, and just hope God was going to be like, Duke. I'd be like, my grades, not going to make it to Duke. Hope that God's going to speak to you. And that's not what I'm talking about. For the Magi, it was a star. For these people, it was something that they read. I think that God speaks to us in ways that we understand. Maybe right now you're going through a serious conflict. Maybe it's with someone you love. Maybe it's with your spouse. Maybe it's with a friend, someone at school. I believe that there's something being said in that. Are you listening? Maybe there's someone in your family you have a lot of tension with right now. You just don't want to be around them. You don't like when they call. I believe that there's something to be said in that. Are you listening? And it might not be the same thing for you as it is for me, but I think that there's something we can take out of all of these experiences. Maybe you're a little unsettled right now by what you're hearing on the news. Maybe it's making you angry. Maybe it's making you nervous. I believe that there's something being said in that. Are you listening? So for me, here's what this looks like, right? Last week, I was reading in a book by a guy named John Maxwell. He's a leader. He does a lot of teaching, thousands and thousands of people. And he said, for me, succeeding is when the people that know me the best respect me the most. The people I see on a regular basis, day to day, in my home, at work, that know me in and out. When those people respect me the most, that's success. Not the people who just read my books. And when I heard that, it hit me. It hit me differently. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. And then a little while later, I was reading something else. It was about like church. And it said, teach them to be worthy of respect. And I, like, again, and it hit me. And so you can say that it's God, or you can say maybe it's something I noticed twice. But for me, that's a moment where I'm like, maybe I need to stop and think about this. Is there something being said in this? Do I need to give a little bit more attention to what's going on at home? Live a little bit more consistently, give a little bit more, like maybe, now you can go crazy looking for signs, like, oh, it's 3:00, that means I need to eat 3 raisins, right? And you'll drive yourself nuts. That's not the point. But when you hear something and it hits you, and it lines up with everything else you know that Jesus has taught, maybe there's something being said in that. Or maybe for you it's an even bigger thing. Maybe it's having faith for the first time. Maybe you're like the Magi and you got questions. And you're just here just because. It's this feeling like there's something else out there. And you're considering like putting your confidence in God for the first time, like really trusting him, trying to have a relationship on a day-to-day basis. Maybe there's something to be said in that, being said in that. Are you listening? Are you listening? I'm going to ask the band to come back up. We'll wrap up here. But I'll leave you with this story. So I heard a story not too long ago. It was actually a few years ago. There's a guy, his name is Joshua Bell. And he plays the violin. Anybody ever heard of him? Apparently he's very good. He plays, play places like Carnegie Hall. And people will pay hundreds of dollars to have a seat to listen to him play the violin. Somebody told me after the first service, apparently it was a really expensive violin. So one day he goes into the New York City subway. And instead of getting on the subway, he kind of like finds an open spot, takes his violin, opens up his case, like puts it on the ground, and he just starts playing, doing his thing. One of the best violinists in the entire world, playing in the New York City subway. And you know what happened? 99% of people just kept on walking. Nobody stopped. Like later on that night or later on that week, people would pay hundreds of dollars to listen to him. And here they're just walking by. There's something remarkable happening right in front of them, but they're not listening because they weren't expecting it, because it was happening in a place that they weren't expecting it to. And maybe right now in your life, maybe it's a tough relationship, maybe it's an unfortunate situation, maybe it's somebody who's not here, maybe it's a struggle, an obstacle, maybe it's a big decision. And maybe there's something being said in that. My question for you is, are you listening? Are you listening? Maybe there's something remarkable happening right in front of you that really can change your life. But you'll only hear it if you're looking for it.